everyone. I'm really excited to be here. So my name is Patrice Caldwell, and I'm the editor of A Phoenix First Must Burn. We are here to talk about mythology and reclaiming stories of old. I have with me 4 amazing authors who are going to introduce themselves and give just a little snippet about your current book or what's forthcoming, and then we'll get started. And this is for the Juneteenth Book Festival organized by L.L. McKinney. Right? Okay.
I guess I will start. Yes. For me on my screen, I'm sitting closest to teacher, so I'll go first. I am L.L. McKinney. I am the author of the Nightmareverse series, which currently features A Blade So Black and A Dream So Dark, with the forthcoming A Crown So Cursed. And also forthcoming from DC, the graphic novel Nubia, Real One.
Oh, that cover was so great.
It's so, Robin did such an amazing job. Robin Smith and it's Robin with a Y, is the artist on that graphic novel, and she did the damn thing. So, yeah, that's me.
I am next to you according to my screen. I don't know if we were all seeing this the same way. So
great. We'll go in teacher's order.
Yeah. So I am Bethany C. Morrow, a best-selling author.
Why you're a best-selling author?
Of Song Below Water, which just came out on June 2nd. I edited an anthology called Take the Mic, fictional stories of everyday resistance, and my adult speculative literary novel Mem came out in 2018, right? Yes, everyone? Yes. Okay.
Yeah,
like, help me out.
But I was like, no, that's wrong.
It's 2018. It's a group effort. Thank you guys for helping me out.
All right, guys, don't be shy. Who's next?
I'll go next. Let me go back.
Teacher's gonna call on
so
you.
I'm Tracy Deonn, and my debut contemporary YA fantasy, Legendborn, comes out September 15th. This is the cover. If you haven't seen it, it's just like amazing.
Let's put the girls' hair together.
Yes,
the hair.
Oh, the hair.
And it's about a girl who is infiltrating a secret society to find out the truth about what happened to her mother. And the society is in North Carolina, based in UNC Chapel Hill. So it's got a lot of Southern history, Southern Black history, and deals with Confederacy and lots of other elements of our past. So it feels very timely. I think all of our books are probably timely right now.
In some way. I mean, yeah, they black.
Mm-hmm.
They're black. They're blackity black.
So.
Okay. Well, all right. Last but not least. Oh my God, what is that? Sorry.
You in the outdoors.
What you doing outside?
I came to my dad's house, so he has someone working on something, so I'm here, and like chickens, and literally he lives in the country.
I was like, you're looking very cute out there in the outdoors.
I mean, they're literally like overalls that are like usually overalls. All right. Tell us about the epicness that is Cinderella Is Dead, which has to be like what a great time. I'm glad y'all got to, like, Cinderella Is Dead. Well, okay, got it.
Got it.
Yes. Well, I'm Kalynn Bayron. I wrote Cinderella Is Dead, and the quick pitch is queer Black girls team up to overthrow the patriarchy in the former kingdom of Cinderella. It takes place about 200 years after the death of Cinderella. It's a remix. It's a fairy tale remix. And yeah, there's the cover.
Let's see that hair, because she got hair on there.
Yes, you gotta do the hair. It's all hair.
I love this to decide how hard we fought to get our hair on the cover.
Yep.
See that hair?
Yes. Show me the hair.
That is great. Okay, thank you so much. Yelling about hair. So I think that's actually a great way. I'm actually going to start a little differently. So what I think is really interesting is all of our books have these Black girls with like hair. Like, I love that this has like braids on the cover.
Yeah.
So I guess I would love to know more about. Walk me through, because there are gonna be people who were listening to this who are starting out. Walk me through your publication journey in a very short way. But also, I kind of want to know things like, were there things you've learned? I mean, there's a variety here, and I love that, right? We have people who, you know, Bethany and Elle, you've multiple books. And then Kalynn and Tracy, you're like starting out. So I would love to know kind of like, also like, did you have any kind of input in your cover design? Did you have like, just tell me about your publishing journey and how, you know, you kind of advocated for yourself and your work. Big question.
Big question. I'll make it quick as possible. I had a woman of color who was my editor for this book, and she immediately was, Rhoda. She immediately was like, okay, so what do you want with the cover? Like it wasn't even a question aside from asking me what I wanted. They sent me, it was like 16 to 18 portfolios of girls, their modeling portfolios are like, pick your top 4. And so I went through them, my sisters went through them, my mom went through them, my grandma went through them. Like, this was a family affair, right? And this young lady was all of our like number 1. And so I sent it in and we were able to get her. And then I was able to fly up to New York through good friends who were like, no, you have to go, like bought my plane ticket, paid for my hotel. They were just like, you have to go. It was a coworker at work. He's a Black man, Keon. I love you, Keon. He was like, so you're going, right? And I was like, I can't afford to. And he's like, I'll be right back. So he left work, went to the ATM, got money for the ticket, came back, put it in my hand and said, don't you ever think about repaying me for this, or I won't call you a friend anymore. You have to go. This is too Black for you not to be there.
Right? Yeah, because it's also like, you know, cover shoots, I'm, you know, used to be an editor, and it's like, it's not often that these things happen. A lot of times, like, you know, stock images, but obviously in the case of all of our novels, like they're either heavily illustrated, they're not like someone just took something from like somewhere. Oh, we're just gonna like smush some images together. So I think it is important for you to like be a part of that experience. It's a once in a lifetime experience.
It was amazing. There are pictures on my social media of me there with the girl. She has messaged me since this went out. She's like, thank you so much. I didn't ever think I would be able to be part of something so big. Thank you for putting me on and all this. It was, because she was 17 and her parents drove her. It was her first ever photo shoot. Her parents drove her up from like DC. She was there. She was really nervous because there were all these people, but she got into it, and I have amazing covers out of it. So that was my experience, and I know I'm extremely blessed in that, but it's because I had a woman of color. I am convinced.
I literally have, so my editor was a woman of color. Y'all know my publicist is a Black woman. My art director is a Black woman. Listen, look, if you want to know, I'm telling you, Leslie Worrell at Tor, who is my art director, I remember really early on, all the things they tell you, don't put the cart before the horse, don't ask about this, it's too early. It must have been like day 2 and they were like, I have cover thoughts. Are you thinking about cover yet? And I was like, oh, we do. Okay, we're doing this. So they asked, like, do you have any preferences? And I personally was like, I want an illustrated cover. I want an illustrated cover. I want both of my girls on it, because something that I kept seeing happen, and I have no idea if this happens to non-Black characters, but it really seemed like folks didn't understand why 2 Black girls needed to be on the cover. Not my folks, not my people.
Like, I was like,
not my people, not my publisher, but it was definitely like when I would talk about it, the thing that people would tell me, like, oh well, I was like, I'm pretty sure. I'm just right. They're both protagonists. I just found it interesting. The feedback that I kept getting. I was like, I'm gonna have 2 Black girls on the cover, so we'll see.
I have to talk to this contractor. You guys keep talking. I'm listening to you.
But I just find it funny.
It's just interesting. It's just interesting why that was going to be a problem for me somehow. So anyway, I said, I'm going to have 2 Black girls on the cover, and their hair is the most important thing. I literally said, even if you don't see their full face, as long as it's just a whole mess of hair, because they do completely different things with their hair. I wanted Effie's twist. I wanted Tavia's twist out, or any of the hairstyles she wears in the book. But when I saw it, and I had another woman of color who ended up being the illustrator, when I saw that their hair was like intertwined, that also was like really, really sweet to me. So
Oh.
I loved the eyes closed and one of their eyes are open, and what it says about their characterization and stuff. I just feel like the attention to detail 100% was because I had a Black woman, like literally a Black woman art director. She knew what was important. So
yeah, I was really clear, I think, very early, as early as I felt I could be about the cover. Nobody was talking about the cover, but you know how you just get like a spidey sense that you need to just go ahead and put that information out there.
yeah.
You just can't. I think this is true for Black women and Black people, but artists in general. You just cannot wait for someone to come to you and hope that they will read your mind and hope that they will come and give you what you need and give you the opening. Sometimes you have to make a way, right? So I just started the conversation very early, and I said, all right, I would like a illustrated cover because it's a contemporary fantasy book, and I have never really seen the types of fantasy illustrated covers that I grew up with a Black girl on the cover. There just aren't enough of them, and so I wanted that just for that fantasy hook. I mean, I'm remembering trade paperbacks back in the day. You would just go and see they got all these magical looking people illustrated.
We did the same. We basically did the same thing.
Yeah,
we like, I want my fantasy Black girls illustrated on a cover.
Yeah. And so I wanted that, and then I knew that I wanted Bree's, my main character's hair big, because it's a big. I mean, hair is a topic. It's discussed. It's a presence. Her choices around her hair often reflect how she's feeling and how safe she feels, even in the context of being at a predominantly white institution even. So I wanted that there, and I knew that I wanted her prominent. And that's just basically all. That's like 3 asks, but I put that out there early, and I feel so fortunate that my editors. Apparently they said, thank you, sounds good. And I didn't hear anything about it. And I just said, well, this is months in advance of when they're working on it. We'll see. And then they ended up taking it to heart and handing that wish list to the designer. And the designer, Laura X, who's a white woman, made a point without talking to me to get a Black illustrator. So she got Hillary Wilson, who does amazing fantasy illustrations. Hillary D. Wilson is remarkable. And so she made sure to get Bree's hair and skin tone, just beautifully done. And I love that she understands. A lot of people don't, who are white, who try and draw characters of color. She understood that hair has different curl patterns on the same head.
That's why.
Yeah, like we don't have one curl and
right.
one type. And she understood that there's different lengths, and that the tighter the curl, the shorter it's going to be, the looser, and all that stuff. And that Bree is a dark-skinned woman. She's darker than I am, and Hillary understood how to play with light so that
the light on her face.
Yeah, her skin is like blue and purple. Yes. It's not just brown. It's got all these different dynamics because our skin carries all these undertones and overtones. So I was very fortunate in that way.
Yeah, Bloomsbury came to me early on and said, it's going to be an animated cover, and I was good with that. But my first kind of response to that email was, it has to be Sophia, my main character. She has to be on the cover front and center, and she has to have her natural hair out. It's just like that. And so they took it, and they found an artist, Manzi Jackson. He's based in Kenya. And he did this amazing sketch, and it's kind of been basically the same from the jump. Like, he knew exactly what I was asking for, and he really did a beautiful job. And then for the UK cover,
it was
like
similar yet different.
Oh yeah, it's different because the first image I got from the UK cover it didn't look like what it looks like now. I had to kind of go back and say, you cannot whitewash her.
It happens a lot in the UK.
Yeah.
I had a conversation with a very big best-selling author recently about her UK cover. We have and actually I won't say that because I will totally give away who it is, but and it happens a lot in the UK. And why is she like suddenly lighter than she is in the US?
Yeah, and Sophia is a brown-skinned girl. Like that's how she is, and it's right there on the page. And I didn't want it to be something else, so so I had to be real clear about that. And they
US cover that had the girl, so that way it would have been so obvious.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. So I'm happy with the way that it came out. It's a different artist there, but yeah, it came out good. I love both covers. They're different, but I love them.
I love it. I love this because I feel like so much of this is about like you guys, like so much agency, and I like the idea of like, just having these kind of tough conversations you need to have, because you do kind of have to be upfront, because I've known situations where people haven't said anything. They're like, oh, they're going to bring it up to me eventually. And sometimes it's like they give you a sketch and you're like, oh, I thought you were going to start a conversation with me, but this is it? Oh, you mean it's final?
Yeah.
Okay, well, I have animals on my cover now. And so I think it's really great that you took that kind of agency. I guess I'm really curious, all of your stories, obviously fantastical elements, but very different. What was that like? The world building, the coming up with the idea, like were there, like how did you take an idea and flesh it out and build this world that in some cases, like even Tracy, like sometimes like some cases it's like it's like within our own world, but it's still different, and it's like, so how do you do that kind of world building? Like how do you take that and weaving in, I feel like what's so interesting in weaving in all these different types of like you said, your own mythologies, your own folklore, or even playing with like Cinderella, but then taking it and making it something new. Like how do you do this? Same with Alice in Wonderland, things like that.
I started with Alice in Wonderland.
We read
starting with her. It was a fight scene. Like I wrote her fighting nightmares before I even knew what they were. She was fighting monsters, and so I started thinking about, okay, so what is this creature that she's fighting? How is she killing it? Why is she the one who has to kill it? And starting with her sitting in the grass, annoyed that the moisture has started to seep into her jeans, and now she's getting cold. It's like, okay, well, this is modern. So if she has jeans on, she didn't get these jeans in Wonderland, so the world sort of filled in once the character herself was front and center. Because I always start with the characters and their immediate reaction to the world, and then I pull back slowly, and that's how I see the world. Of course, I'm a pantser, so that happens kind of naturally.
So you got like an image of the girl. You started with, it just came into your head, like this girl who was like,
I started with like, this is who Alice is. I didn't know about her because it doesn't, I'm going to say it's a little bit of a pet peeve of mine when people are like, the character fully formed, just step into my head. And it's like, so you knew everything about them in that immediate instant. You knew about their past. You knew about, their mama passed, their daddy passed, or both their moms passed, or their parents passed, or you knew all of this immediately. No.
That's impressive. That's pretty impressive.
Right? I'm just like, it's just people actually push whole human beings into existence and don't know everything about them at that point. So you mean to tell me that this person you have really? Okay.
Well, I think also that kind of mindset excuses world building, right? It kind of makes I knew everything like that, so they're just like that. Like it wasn't me.
Right. I can't do anything about it. I can't be held responsible.
Sorry. Like, I took a workshop where someone was like, they just were Latino. And I was like, that's
not how that works. That's a whole lie, because because Alice is the 5th book that I've written, but she's the 1st book that I published. The first 4 were about white boys, because I thought that's what you had to write in order to be published. So this whole idea, like they just popped up, no, you were influenced. Something made
That's the thing.
Happen.
That's the thing. Your imagination has been programmed. Okay. So if somebody, particularly if a white author tells me they popped into my head Latinx or something, no, you thought that'd be interesting. That's not what happened, because we don't exist in your imagination enough for that to be the case.
Oh, that's right.
Okay, so I didn't.
Are we gonna talk about? Are we gonna talk about?
I was like talking about. She was like, okay, so Alice popped it with jeans, and then Bethany was.
Like, we gonna have church today.
Sermon.
We gonna have church today.
He's a visiting minister.
We're gonna take up a love offering.
I guess we're here. Listen,
that was it. It was the character the world came from watching her. That's like, she's in every aspect of it. And then I started watching other characters as they were introduced. I didn't know that the Tweedles were gonna be Russian twins. They just, I had no idea. I knew her and I knew Hatta because of my own hang-ups with particular types of characters in fantasy. But other than that, it was like, I want to do Alice in Wonderland, but I don't want it to be, I want it to be a remix. Like you said, I didn't want it to be a retelling. And it's not a retelling because nothing that happened in the original book happens in this one, except some chick named Alice goes into Wonderland.
The three of you have remixes. Like, I feel like that's actually a better way of explaining your books, is like, you're like, I'm taking this, and I'm like remixing it, because it's not, I mean, Tracy, you did a phenomenal thread on this, talking about how, like, you know, I've been like obsessed with Arthurian stuff for like ever. And I think it's so interesting because I feel like people always try to act like it's like this one type of way, when like, we all know that stories are,
they're remixes.
They're passed down. They're
fanfics.
Yeah, they're
The
fanfics.
original. Makes a lot. Is an OC insert. Like,
yes, he is. Somebody made him, a French author was like, but what about me? And so he put in, and so, I mean, you're talking like, gosh, I'm going to get the date wrong, but I think it was like 12th century or something. And so you're talking about like a 6th century sort of origin story that just had crumbs of what we know. And then people picked it up, and it was an oral tradition first. And so let's talk about that. Like, oral traditions are not owned by one single person. And that's, and so I feel like the Black community understands that, which is why remix culture is so big, because we know we can take what I heard and then play with it and play on it and add on it and then not own that. That's, how that happens even with dances in the Black community. But, so Arthur was just like a little few crumbs that somebody mentioned, and then in Wales, and then other people picked it up and added on. We have 1,500 years of Arthurian fanfic, and yet people will try and hold primacy to what the written word was in this one century or that century written by a white dude. And so, my interest in Arthur has always been, I mean, on the surface, I really like the idea of, a magical sword. I like the idea of a band of characters coming together for a single purpose. I mean, that's just sort of like, that's enjoyable in lots of different spaces. But for Arthur, what's interesting is that story is very much about what do we hold sacred, who gets power. I love the idea that power could come to the right person. That sort of Sword in the Stone version of the story, that one that we sort of like hang on to, the Disney version, is about someone getting power when they need it, when the people around them need it. That's such a wish, like there's something about that wish that feels very pure to me. But really, for Legendborn, it all started with Bree needing to understand why her mother died. I mean, that's really the heart of the book.
I love that. So all this other stuff came after.
Yeah. Like all the, it started with Bree. It started with me asking that question: why did my own mother pass away? And then realizing that I was a part of a mystery in my own life, trying to understand why my mother lost her mother at the same age that I lost her. Like, it had gone back, I found out, 3 generations that we know of, maybe more. And so I started asking myself, like, well, I'm a writer, right? So my job, hearing that, and we all do this, we all ask, why do people go? Why are people taken from us? And we never get an answer. But I think that, my job as a writer has always been to give myself an answer. That's really what the book is, that it's about a girl saying, well, I want to find out what happened, and also trying to weave that in with, I think, our natural instinct, which is that we want to feel as though that loss is about something bigger. And that it didn't just happen, that there's a reason why this happened to me and to my family. And so Bree, I created a world where she gets to answer that, but she's asking the same question that I think Arthuriana asked, which is, whose lives are important enough to talk about after they're gone? And who do we honor, and who gets to have a monument? And this is a question that gets asked in the South. And so I started seeing all these different connections to legacies, and what does legacy mean, and how does it impact what we celebrate today, and what does it mean to be a legend? What does it mean to become legendary? Because Legend is different than mythology. Legend is based on loose sort of historical events that people have discussed over time, whereas mythology is this idea of, an imagined world with gods and goddesses or something like that. And so this idea that there's a historical nugget that matters enough that we're still going to talk about it and call it legendary, well, who gets that word and why? And so that's kind of where I ended up interweaving Southern history, where we're wrestling with this all the time about what becomes this legacy story of what happened, and then also Bree's personal history, and then Arthuriana. And so those three things kind of became the story, and everything else around it, the world, helped me support the question. Like the magic, I mean, I'm a science fiction fantasy geek, so I wanted to write cool magic, obviously, but like the magic supports the question, the magic supports power dynamics that I wanted to expose. I mean, I think that's something really common with people of color and Black people. When we talk about writing fantasy, we're never just talking about magic for spark's sake.
Mm-hmm.
No, I think, and we're not. And I also think, like, I always think about Holly Black has these like rules for writing fantasy. And some of the questions she asks are like, who has power, who wants it? And I feel like, I think that's ingrained in a lot of fantasy novels, but I notice that especially people of color, Black people, like when you're writing fantasy, it really is interrogating, like you're trying to say something about, about power structures and why does this person have power and why do these people not have power? And what is the system that has made it so that, but it's often through the lens of like a single character, right? And it's like these big questions through one person.
Yeah.
So it makes sense that you like start with a character.
Mm-hmm.
With my story, I literally started with the not the character of Tavia, but the character of a Black woman who's a siren, because I was watching something in real life and I was like, Black women are sirens. So the line, "My voice is power," is what started the whole thing. And I think the context in which I said it, which was identifying a power that is being denied by the world, is what set the story the way that it is in the book. So the girl who is saying it has power, knows she has power, cannot act on that power, and that power is feared and suppressed. So in terms of the mythology that I use in A Song Below Water, you have sirens, which are Black women who have power, and it's never, the reader knows from the very beginning that they have power. And then the people who were really the top of the food chain in the mythological hierarchy are a loco, which is my Black American diaspora, creation, based on remix, based on very, very loosely based on the actual Central African folklore of Boloko. But their power, and I mean, by this point, people have read it or not, I don't know, but so I'm going to say some stuff that I'm like, sorry. So for me, the Oloko in the book are in the seat of power, but they don't actually have any particular powers. I don't know if anybody picks up on that, but they like, if you're like, what do Oloko do? I mean, I don't know, but we love whatever it is. Like they have an entire mythology of just basically. I'm going to break it down real easy for everybody. Oloko are the image of white privilege in the book. That's it. They don't have any particular power. They don't have any particular contribution. They don't have any. It's just given to them. They do nothing uniformly that you could even point to as like an origin for why they have this. And I remember when I had to tell my editor, it's white privilege. And then it was like, okay, everything is making more sense. And I'm like, right, that's it. That's what they have. So
I think it's a good thing. I love that because I think because we have so many things. We have people, you have people who actually have power. And then you have these people, like you said, it's like white privilege, right? Where it's just like taking up space.
Yes, you're demonstrating somebody who has power that cannot be denied and it is being actively suppressed. And then you have a whole other group of people that have been chosen to be treated as though they have power. And there's nothing backing it up. There's no reason for it. There's no explanation for it. The only thing that I said in my mind was, okay, but even the people that are given this power, or they're given this position, I'm still not going to have it be Eurocentric. Sorry. So I took from Central African folklore to create the popular people in my book, but just because I wanted to decentralize the entire fantastical world away from what we've been taught.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. No, that's I love that. But also like I love the idea of like just like, you know, having that modern day. So it's very easy to be able to make those different like, you know, carols, also putting it in Portland. I think it's so great.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, you know, for Cinderella, you know, the pushback that I've gotten for changing this entire kind of story has been crazy. Like I've gotten emails telling
me, because there's like 50. I mean, like as someone who's like a big Cinderella girl,
but we know why.
Yeah,
I'm like there are like literally when your book like there are like 50. There was just that stepsister. There are 50 bajillion like.
I need to hear more about these emails. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah, this is. I mean, it's Cinderella's white. Cinderella is straight. And this is like obviously
like she's a real person.
Yeah, like I'm like who? What? Like this is a fairy tale. Are you serious?
Ma'am, this is an Arby's. What are you?
Yeah, like what are you talking about?
What are you doing here?
You don't actually know what brothers.
Yeah, like,
come to defend her honor.
Yeah, and these stories, people are very protective of these kind of fairy tales.
They are.
And they want them told a certain way, and we don't even have access to that.
That's wild.
So yeah, it's crazy, but you know, it's the same people that are mad that Ariel is cast as a black girl for the live action.
When, what's her name? Kiki. When she got cast as Cinderella in Broadway, people were like lost their shit.
Yeah, and it's the same with Belle in Beauty and the Beast. When Toni Braxton was doing Belle, they were
when are they gonna stop being so embarrassing? Like, when are they gonna stop being so juvenile? I'm so confused. Like, how do you even wrap your head around? You need an explanation of my presence.
Yeah,
but if you get 100% of the spotlight, ain't nobody gotta ask any questions about that. But I show up one time and we need a whole explanation for.
Right, and it's
that's a crazy way to start your publishing. It's a crazy like it's how did you work through that mentally?
Yeah. I mean,
you started your.
I you know I know who I'm doing this for, you know, and that's what kind of keeps me you know moving forward is that I'm real salty that I never got to see myself as a princess. You know what I mean? And there's a lot of other people who feel the same way, and we deserve to be there taking up space. And
she said it's canon now. I got my own canon. So
listen, everybody in this story is black, and that's just how it is. Cinderella is black in this story. Every single person, and it's because I didn't you know, I never got to see myself in these fairy tales, and you know, Disney princesses were the thing, you know, coming up in like the 90s, you know, being a kid is like that was the thing. Everybody else got access to that, but I didn't. But you know, it's
we got Tiana as the frog after a little while.
Yeah. Oh, I'm so mad about it.
We got Nala. I feel like we got Nala kind of.
Yeah.
Listen, but who did her voice?
Right?
But who did her voice? They did a whole set in Africa situation and was like, okay, you can have James Earl Jones.
Yeah, it's, you know, and that's, you know, especially when we're talking about these princess stories and these fairy tales, it's very heteronormative. It's very, you know, and that's it, kind of setting it in this world where Cinderella was a real person and where the events of that original story took place. I wanted to know what that looked like for somebody who didn't want to be with a prince and whose happily ever after didn't have to be tied to being married or having a man or, you know, being chosen. It's kind of about, you know, I wanted to see it through a totally different perspective. And you know, I get told a lot to, you know, tell my own stories, and I kind of, you know, instead of taking Cinderella and making it my own. And so my answer to that is this story in and of itself, but also it's, you know, if maybe I'd have those stories to reimagine if I hadn't been stripped of the opportunity to do that, if my ancestors hadn't been stripped of their own stories. If, you know, I'm going to take this little story that y'all love so much and I'm going to make it wholly my own, and then I'm going to give it back to the readers who deserve to see themselves.
That's also, and that's empowering.
And who's gonna check me, boo? I mean,
Yeah,
that's where I.
do about it.
That part right there.
When you get your then you can walk out the door.
Yeah.
Look, and you know what you need to say to him. You know what you need to say to him, because I love some petty irony. Baby girl, if you're so pressed, write your own.
Yes.
Yeah.
Ooh,
If you're so pressed, build your own.
Yes.
I don't know. Have you got people accusing you of trying to blackwash Cinderella yet?
Blackwash.
Yeah, it's the question of why are these people, why is everybody in this story Black? You know that
They never asked
Cinderella-
that question when you watched Friends.
They don't.
Nobody ever asked those
Never.
questions. Listen,
That's
Never.
the thing that they get. You blackwashing Alice. You blackwashing.
take it.
Really? Blackwash?
It's crazy though.
Okay.
Like right now we're seeing all these white people getting to say statements like the Friends person who's like, I'm looking at this and I feel like we paint an unreal image of New York.
You feel like that today? You feel like that today? Because we said it at the time. We said it at the time and couldn't nobody care less. Okay,
Yeah.
so I'm so tired of all these people coming up like, you know what? Now that I think about it, excuse
Now that you
you.
think about it, you mean now that you're scared of being dragged?
Exactly.
Right.
I'm like, y'all are so lucky that this book isn't just 200 and something pages of a CB4 quote. Cause I'm Black, y'all. Cause I'm Black, y'all. Cause I'm blinkety. That could have been the whole book. You are lucky. You are so lucky.
last minute, and then it's like you open the book and you're like,
It's just me saying I'm Black, y'all. That's the
They're
whole.
just saying it because they don't want Black Twitter to be like, this you?
Mm-mm.
Yeah.
That part
But
right
what I have, and here's the thing,
and we
Because
are
Zoom is anti-Black.
So Kalynn, so you were talking about how people are basically upset at you about blackwashing. So I'll just get you started and you can about blackwashing Cinderella, which is we've all agreed is fucked up because it's fucking Cinderella. It's literally created so damn long ago. Moving on.
Yeah.
So I guess you had that experience. You've dealt with a lot of shit from that unfairly. I guess I won't ask you how you feel like your publisher supported you because that might be. I don't want you to have to go into that on screen if you don't want to. But I guess
it's fine. No,
okay.
it's
So
fine. Yeah. No, they've so Bloomsbury has really been very supportive. I'm happy with going through the editing process and everything like that. I think where there's always room to improve is the marketing and the promo because you can't just kind of slot this book into something that you've established for your white authors who have a full cast of white characters. It's not going to work.
They don't know how to
like
market
that.
to Black communities.
Yeah, and that's what that's kind of what I'm running into right now, and they are completely they've been really open to suggestion and to ideas that I've come up with and my agent, but yeah, there's a lot to be there's some progress that we need to make right there in that area.
Yeah, no, that's really hard because I definitely had that same problem. I got lucky, which is unfortunate, that you have to get lucky. I got lucky, I think, that there was a conversation about Black bloggers and Instagrammers right before my book came out. So people were having all these lists. And so Penguin had a whole thing they took and they did a whole mailing just to Black bloggers. It was an amazing mailing, but it was one of those things where I was like, but before that, they just, I would mention things and they'd be like, we don't know about that festival. And I'd be like, it's very big for us.
Right. Baby learn.
Very big. I mean, someone just 2 years ago, or I think 2 years ago, or maybe 1 year ago, made a collaboration between PRH and Afropunk, and it was started by a black assistant suggested, and then part of the issue was she was just like, why aren't we promoting an Afropunk? There's a lot of book stuff, and I think it's just I always say it comes from this mentality that back in the day people used to say Black people didn't read, and I think people in publishing now, they know this, most people in publishing, they're like, okay, they know it's stupid, right? But that kind of stuff is trickles
they
down.
money. They know where that money's coming from.
Right, but it trickles down, and the problem is that because of that, the marketing, they've never made efforts to find out how to market to the Black community because we're so hard to market.
But really, that's, to me, that's not even the biggest problem. The biggest problem is you don't have no Black people in that room.
No. no, that's the first problem. That's
the first.
Yeah,
that's the first problem, because
you
shouldn't be learning to do something that you would have expertise on if you had Black people working for you in the first place.
Yeah, and I think people feel like sometimes it's tokenism, but I'm like, it wouldn't be tokenism if it wasn't only one Black publicist.
It's not tokenism if Ceresia is the director. It's not tokenism if I'm like, the thing is, I didn't have to ask certain questions. I didn't have to ask anything when they just said, hey, for the Black booktuber and blogger mailing, we want an author letter specific to them. Okay, these are the things that are going directly to Black independent bookstore owners. Would you mind writing an author letter specifically to them? Like, this was stuff that nobody had to. I didn't have to give nobody a list. I didn't have to tell nobody, like, okay, well, here's where you can find Black people. My thing is, we have to be just really honest that white supremacy will eat its own and eat itself in order to harm those they've chosen to oppress. So it's not even a situation that you're not making enough money off of Black people. You are making money off of Black people. You could make more money if you cater to Black people. And the reason that you don't is just because. It's just
also, like, you know, there's been so many studies that show that Black people is actually, there was like, I think there was studies class that did that show that like Black and Latinx parents and others or go out of their way to find books. I mean, it's obvious to us, right?
That's what I'm saying.
We will go and find the book. I mean, I think about this all the time with, you know, my friend Ebony is like heads up marketing at Epic Reads and YA marketing and stuff like that at Harper. And I think it's very telling, like the Black authors that have been published there, that have been lead titles, they've been published in this such an authentic way. And I'm like, it's because of her.
Exactly. It's not a mystery.
Yeah.
It's not a mystery. My point is, you guys are making money off of us just like the whole rest of the world, every other economy is making money off of us. You know how to count our money. So clearly the problem is not that you really believed we didn't read. You knew that. You knew that was a lie. You perpetuated that for other reasons. Let's just be honest. It's Juneteenth. I'm gonna say that. Juneteenth. Can we please just tell the truth?
If you're here and you're listening, this is what
it is.
This is what it is.
For reclaiming myths and these are the lies y'all telling in publishing as well.
Right. These are the myths. These are the myths that are going on in publishing. Can we dispel a few?
I mean, even Juneteenth is a good example of that, right? Like Juneteenth. Is like you talk to a Black person about Juneteenth, and you're like, yeah, that was liberation. That was when we felt like we got free. You know, in terms of the ability to say slavery is over, right? And so we're talking, and I put that in quotes because it's debatable. And
it was 2 years late.
Right. And so I do think like, it's perfect that this is happening on Juneteenth.
Right.
Yep.
Also, this is my birthday.
It is. She's a Juneteenth baby.
A Juneteenth
She
baby.
really free. She free. It's her birthday.
Yes. My Texas relatives never let me forget it.
Yes.
No, as someone from, I mean, the things that I grew up, I mean, I'm here now. I grew up in Texas, and like Juneteenth is like a party.
Yes.
We go out.
We celebrate today.
Yes. It is a party. Like, it's like, you'll see like crazy parades, all this stuff. Hello, that's my sister. What's up? Can I finish this?
Stretch it out.
Family on Juneteenth. That's family. Black family, what you doing? You working?
Yeah, no, she just got me. She's like, what are you doing? I also don't live here, so she's probably like, why the hell are you here? But I guess so. Just to wrap things up, like, I want to know, and we've been honest, so keep being honest. Tell me about a book, not yours, not any of ours. So, like,
not any of ours? Okay.
No, because I want to know, like, what was the book that, like, you saw yourself in, and if yours was the first one, or what someone else's, I mean, I guess if you can say that if one of ours was the first one, I think that's fair. But like, I guess I'm curious, like, because I think that's a real thing. Like, have you seen yourself authentically in a book? Do you feel like what is that for you, or what was the book for you that was like an authentic representation of where you were like, oh, that's me?
So I didn't get to read like Octavia Butler and Toni Morrison in high school and such. I didn't even know, that that was a possibility until later. I didn't see myself as a Black girl who loved, well, especially now, past tense, loved Harry Potter and geeky things. I'm just saying. Until I read,
it is a past tense.
you know, because they made their own wands, and she did things, started stuff that my family did, and she was into stuff that I was into. That's when I first saw myself in a published book. I was writing Alice at the time, but it was hands like the most of myself was that.
That's what I have to say is like, where have I seen pieces of myself?
That's what I'm saying, yeah, because like pieces is
because there are pieces of myself in A Song Below Water, but if I would say the closest I feel to who I am, I mean, circumstances notwithstanding, will be the book that comes out next year, again, that I wrote, because I read Toni Morrison and I read Octavia Butler, but what I noticed, and this is, first of all, Toni don't have to write nobody else's hometown. She gonna write Ohio all day, every day, because that's where she's from. She, you know, and she has the same thing that we have, which is, where am I? So Medallion, Ohio, it is. Lorraine, Ohio, it is. Like, wherever, you know, she gonna do it. So my issue was, I saw my voice in Toni Morrison.
I love that.
When I was a teenager, and I read, because people would try to take ownership of my vernacular, of my lyricism, and it would all be, oh, because you went to Christian school, or oh, because you went to private school, or oh, because of these things that you're in. And I'm like, do you understand that if you read my journal, it sounds so much more formal than anything you've ever, like any way you've ever heard me speak? And people would talk to me like it was forced, or like it was something that I was trying to emulate. And I was like, this is literally my natural pentameter. And when I read Toni Morrison, I was like, told you. Yeah. Effing told you. This is like, you didn't make this. You didn't create this. You can't even have you read jazz? Like, you can't do that. I mean, you can't do that melody. You can't even identify the melody. You know how long it took probably for white people to know what jazz was actually doing. So I'm like, please. But I never saw present tense, West Coast. It was always that people were always trying to tell me that I was from someplace that I'm not. People were always trying to tell me that, and I was like, listen, I'm from California. I'm a Black girl born in the 80s in California. Why can't I find that? Why can't I see that? Because that is something very specific. There is a culture very, very specific to that. So A Song Below Water is like a beginning. It's like writing Black girls into the narrative of the West Coast. But the follow-up, it's not the second or the sequel, but the follow-up that happens in the same world with a different character, that will be the most I personality-wise have been on the page.
I would say the same for me in terms of personality, like my own book. I mean, I don't, you know, in terms of like, when I look at sort of the full dimension of me, I feel like I've not seen it, you know, even 60%. I would say like probably the part of the effort of the book was like, okay, let me do this, because I'm looking around, I'm like, nobody else seems to be doing it, or asking for it or anything. So there's that. I would, you know, sometimes I answer this question, I say Paul Beatty, the White Boy Shuffle, it's a part memoir, part lyrical narrative story, but it's about sort of like a poet, a Black boy poet, moving through all these various spaces, moving through academic spaces, and having his voice challenged and challenging back, and like understanding, sort of like analyzing the way that his creativity is rubbing up against assumptions about quality of craft and voice and lyricism and all those things. And so I talk about that book a little bit because I think that's there, but even that, it's a Black man, that's not me. So it took, I mean, this is probably it. And I think, honestly, I'm going to be continuing to work on it. I like what you said, Bethany, about next book. I mean, this is a 16-year-old iteration of Tracy, but I think in terms of growing up with me and where I am now, that's still to come.
Yeah, I agree. I think the first time that I'm really seeing a lot more of myself is in this story that I wrote. And I've seen, you know, hints of myself and my family in other works, especially by Zora Neale Hurston, because my family is very Southern, and so I see a lot of them in her work, and of course Toni Morrison and Octavia Butler. But when it comes to like these YA stories, like it's just not there. And so
I mean, how can you when so many of them are so white?
Yeah.
I mean, like
50 Shades.
Like 10 people else are the ones who are writing these.
Yeah.
They've come out within the last 2 years. So.
And it's and I think it's a lot about I had said before building our own table, but something that Bethany said the other day really kind of stuck with me, and I can't remember exactly what it was, what I was watching, but you were speaking about that kind of analogy and how that kind of it doesn't allow for acknowledging the people who've come before. And so I think more the way I think about it now is, we kind of need to name and shame the people who've been burning down the tables.
Exactly.
Whole time. So
exactly.
So
it's a historical slap in the face. And
yes.
Black people, because history hasn't been taught to us, will keep saying that's what we need to do. Black people need to. And I'm like, baby, you don't know how many times we've done this.
Yes.
Well, that's what. Yeah. So many.
We've done this over and over, and it's been burned down in Canada, in the United States. Like, so do not believe that lie. Please don't keep saying that lie. We have built our own. We did write our own. We did, we did all of that. And if you read Toni Morrison's Paradise, it's a really good, not Paradise, I'm sorry, Love talks about it's a strip of beach that was like one of the many resort towns that Black people built and owned and operated. And where are they now? And where is that beachfront property?
It's also happened in publishing too. I've talked about so many people, we've had like many waves in publishing, and there were a lot of Black presses and stuff that started in the 90s and things like that. There were a lot of Black imprints people don't know about. Like one of my own mentors started a whole imprint. It was like Black imprint. And they all are like, if you look for them, they're like, whoop, where are they? And that's the thing, like for me, I'm not as interested in that because those things often go away when the person goes away. And it's like, and it's like, I think people forget that we've done it before many times.
Many times.
I think we have to wrap up. I'm gonna ask for one quick thing as everyone leaves. Tracy, I know you have to leave first. So just, first of all, name your book. And then also if you could tell us just one piece of advice you'd give to fellow Black writers, listening to this, like, anything. It can be about anything.
So I'm Tracy Deonn, Legendborn, comes out September 15th. And my piece of advice is to write the things that thrill you. If you wake up in the morning and there's an exciting thing, don't quiet that voice. Just start writing there. Don't shut down any of your writing instincts. Just don't do it. I mean, it doesn't mean that you can't revisit it or revise. We all have to do that. But that spark that gets you writing, follow that.
Bethany.
Bethany.
Oh, sorry. I'm looking at my screen.
No, it's fine. We shifted spots.
We did.
Go.
Latrice,
go.
I already told Latrice she can sign my books. We are going to be tricking people
now. Okay.
forever. It's going to be hilarious.
Kalynn, you can sign my book.
Bethany, don't say that because you know that's actually going to happen.
I know. Listen, I'm just taking ownership of it because we already know. So I am Bethany C. Morrow. The book is A Song Below Water. It came out from Tora Team June 2nd. It is out now, available now. Get it from independent bookstores, please, if you can. My advice is don't be ashamed if the story that you need is the one that you have to write. Like, that is not our fault. That's not our doing. That's their doing. So if you do not see yourself, it's not vanity to say, hey, this thing that you've had 100% of the time for thousands and thousands of years, I deserve that too. I have an imagination too, and I'm tired of it being populated by white people. So do it.
Hey. All right. I'm LL McKinney, author of The Nightmareverse. 2 of the books are out now, 3rd one coming next year. My advice would be not to give up. Don't stop. It'll be hard because they want it to be hard because they want you to stop.
Thank you.
So don't stop. Just don't stop.
Kalynn, close us out.
I'm Kalynn Bayron, and I wrote Cinderella Is Dead. It comes out July 7th. Everywhere books are sold, please.
Right around the corner.
Yeah, right around the corner. It's creeping up on us. Please, try to get it from your independent bookstore if you can, your local indie. And my kind of piece of advice would be just don't listen when someone tells you that something is overdone, that a trope is,
That is
overdone, because it's not over until we get a chance to do it.
Thank you.
And just lean into that and write what you love.
That is a great way to close out. Well, thank you, everyone. Really appreciate this. Buy everyone's books. Elle, can you tell us more about the information festival? Is a website link? Where are people?
It's right now, everything is just on the Juneteenth Book Fest YouTube. We are putting up all of these videos, and hopefully this will progress into something where you'll get to see us all face to face.
Yay, love it. Awesome. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Patrice. Thanks, Al.
Bye.